Namaskar. Welcome to this session of Straight Drive. I am Sudhanshu Mani. Friends, you know that we are in the 150th year of Gandhi, and this week we are celebrating the valedictory week of this momentous occasion. I thought I will invite somebody to talk about Gandhi in Straight Drive, and today I have with you Mr. Ravi Bhatt, columnist, author and historian. He has written hundreds and hundreds of columns in both English and Hindi in various newspapers. He has authored 2 books, and he is above that a historian. Welcome, Mr. Bhatt.
Thank you.
So, as you know, I am a railwayman. So, my first question would be, there is a lot of talk of the role of railways in Gandhi's struggle and Gandhi's life. So, I would like to ask you to tell our viewers as to how it all began.
Well, something very amusing and interesting, and which generally people miss, and that railways has such very important juncture of Mahatma Gandhi, and the turning points. I know that's something very interesting. The turning points in the life of Mahatma Gandhi is invariably associated with railways. And to start with, I'll tell you, then when this Gandhiji, he had gone to South Africa, and everyone knows what kind of a struggle he had gone to represent a merchant there, and how he spent about roughly 21 years there. And that's by that time he was a typical lawyer. Generally, he was, and that when he was traveling from Durban to Pretoria, and he had a first class ticket. And when he's traveling, so one white man, he had come in the train compartment, and when he saw that Gandhiji is there, a person who is not white.
Yeah.
So that's very unfortunate part of mankind. It's all over the world, not only the white and black, it's everywhere. They are preconditioned without even giving any, rationalizing it or thinking about it. They are conditioned. This man, non-white, they used to look down upon him, and he couldn't think of that I can travel with this man.
Yeah.
And he, by his body language, by his words, he made it very clear to him, and he asked him to shift. And as you know, the Gandhi had the valid ticket, why should he? He immediately went back and came with the 2 railwaymen. And again, forced him to leave that. Again, Gandhiji refused to budge. Then he had come with a police. All the 3, they had gone back and they came with a policeman. And his, the luggage was thrown out of the compartment, and Gandhiji was forced to, leave that place, train, deboarded. And Gandhiji had to spend, it's a well-known fact, everyone knows, I'm reinforcing it. He had to spend the night there. And when he was there in the night, that was a turning point in the life of Mahatma Gandhi. Because he thought it's injustice, it's incorrect, and it is not done. Today it is being done with me, it is being done with others also. And that night at railway station, played such an important role in the political and social, I'll not say only political, it's a social and socio-political journey of Mahatma Gandhi. It was, if I say, that was a starting point, that may not be exaggeration.
Yes.
After that, when he comes back to India, and as you know, this Rowlatt Act, he has started with that, though it was a very short-lived, opposed that. And when he was here, that was just after that, just after this act, on the 26th of December, 1916, a gentleman was traveling in train from Allahabad to Lucknow. And you know who was that man? He was the person, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. I hate to call Pandit, he was a Jawaharlal Nehru, our ex-Prime Minister. He was traveling. That time, his age was 27 years.
Okay.
And the same year he is married also,
Okay.
Kamala Nehru. So when he had come here, a great man was there. A great man by any stretch of imagination, by any standard. And his name was Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, both these greats, if you don't want to call them great, the most important people of Indian politics in freedom struggle, they met at Lucknow railway station. That time Gandhi's age was 47 years, he was 27 years, the gap was 20 years. And interesting, they talked about 20 minutes only.
Okay. Okay. So taking it forward,
Yeah.
although the first incident in South Africa, one could say, does not show railways in good light, but those were the days and these things were the norm. But later, the Britishers built Indian railways with a view to help in a way to connect the country and to make it easier for them to subjugate the country. But the same railways was used by Gandhi, to my mind, to great effect by traveling all across India, and his favorite third or sometimes second class. So how do you see that?
Mr. Mani, I must tell you one thing. You have deprived me of an opportunity by making a complete statement.
No,
the moment you use the first sentence, I was so happy that I am going to counter it. You said that's Britishers, they created a railway network to connect different places. I was about to counter it, but then you made a full statement. That is absolutely correct. I agree with you. For their convenience, they have not done a favor to the Indian masses, to Indians. It was their requirement, as you say, they want to subjugate the Indians, and that is the reason they created this network, and then goods and other things they wanted to transport it. They did it. And you have said very well. I endorse what you have said. The Mahatma Gandhi has used that railway network which was meant to enslave Indians, Indian masses, Indian population. He had used that network to get rid of the Britishers, to free the India from the clutches of Britishers. Gandhi has used it very effectively. And this interesting part of that, Gandhi traveled all over the country through the railways, and he always insisted, as you all know, we all know that he always wanted to connect with the masses at grassroots level. So he always wanted to travel in third class, lowest class call it. But his followers kept on insisting that no, he should travel in a slightly higher class, so that he has the time while in traveling to write articles for his journals, number one. Number two, he can reply back all the correspondence which are addressed to him, which he used to pour in. And mind it was not a very limited number of correspondence. It was a voluminous kind of the supposed he was getting. So he used to get that time. And this, I'll say still it is. If you really want to touch the soul of Indians or Indians, what you call a commoner, aam aadmi just you call it. So you have to still travel by the train.
Yeah.
So that right from a peon to a principal of a prestigious education institute. You will meet them in the train, and you get so much time sitting, just sitting together in a very small place, that even if you are not a very talkative person, you are not a very social person, but the boredom forces you to talk to others. And that is where, and the best part is when you talk in a railway compartment, what happens, this, you can open up your heart, because this man, you have just known him, he'll be with for 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe 6, 7 hours, and then he's going to get down from the train and you will never meet again. So this train is giving such an, just imagine a platform to get rid of your pent-up feelings, which probably you can't tell your wife or your son or your daughter. Because they can again, they can use that information against you when you are not on a good terms with them. But your co-passenger, if you hit along with him properly, though not always, so you can get rid of your pent-up feelings and you can spend a very quality time with him. That is what only railway can give you. Mind it, in aircraft you have a very short span of time.
Yeah. In fact, so I always say that since we are on the subject of railways now, that Indian Railways is not only a microcosm of the total Indian way of life. From a window you see the marvel of India pass you by.
Yes.
And the platform.
Very well said, very well said, very well said.
And the platform is a great leveler, but even today with so much of air travel and other means, the richest to the poorest stand on the same platform to catch a train because the reach of Indian Railways. Well, coming back to Gandhiji, I have two...
No, you see, I'll again like to repeat that because I'm tempted to repeat it because I love it.
Yeah.
You know that as you said, just from the window of your compartment, you are simply seeing different colors of India.
Yeah.
When the train moves.
Absolutely, yes.
That's beautiful.
Someday I should have another discussion with you on Indian Railways alone.
Yeah.
I now have two quick questions on Gandhiji. First is, how do you see Gandhiji as a Mahatma? And how relevant is Gandhi in today's India with all its struggles and paradoxes?
So I'll answer your second question first.
Sure.
How I see relevant. See, no matter we are discussing about a period 300 years back, maybe 500 years back, or maybe we are talking about the future. But there are certain facts in life, the basic truth, basic facts of life, which are perpetual, which never change. Things keep changing, but basic things, they never change. And Gandhiji had, in his ideology, in his practice, he had invariably addressed the basic facts, basic truths of day-to-day life and an ideal society. He has talked about it. I personally feel, and that is the reason that Gandhiji is today as relevant as he was earlier, and Mr. Mani, maybe more.
Okay.
The reason is, in the period of Gandhiji, there was only one problem, basic, Britishers. Rest, the life was not as complicated and it was not as self-centered as today it is. Earlier people used to know in their neighborhood who's doing what. People were concerned that if I'll do something wrong, what people in my locality, they will tell me. Today that fear, that people in my locality, people in my area, I'm answerable to them for my social prestige. That has gone.
That is gone.
So, the self-centered people, right from acting in their favor, they are doing that. And one example is, earlier, if someone comes to know that a person is accepting bribes, mind it, people were not socializing with him. I'm talking 50, 60 years back, and he was, just discussed as he was looked on upon. And today when it comes to bribe, and we all know I don't have to make my statement complete, how it has got the social acceptance, the bribe. So this is the time. Now, I'm coming back to Gandhiji. So now I said that is the reason Gandhi is more relevant. I'll give an example.
Yeah.
You talk about religion. See, the most important thing after the food and cloth for human being and shelter, the next most important thing for human being is religion. Now, what happened about religion? Gandhiji was very clear. Gandhiji had an influence. Her mother was basically Vaishnavite. So he has the influence of Vaishnava sect of India. Hinduism he was influenced by. He was influenced by the Jainism also. But see how that's his approach of Gandhiji. Gandhiji always considered India is by the way fortunately India is the birthplace of 4 religions. One, as we all know, Hinduism. Second is Jainism. Third is Buddhism, and fourth is Sikhism. All 4 religions. That's something very rare to come by. So, Mr. Mani, that's in this place in India, Gandhiji had always considered these 2, Jainism, Sikhism, and the Buddhism, as a part of Hinduism. Number 1. Though technically he was absolutely wrong, because Jainism and Buddhism, they are the non-Vedic religion, non-Vedic. They don't believe in Vedas. And Hinduism, yes, Vedas. Though Hinduism also started with non-Vedas.
Yeah.
But very few people know that in South, to start with Hinduism, they didn't start with the Vedas. It was a later addition into that. So Gandhiji, number 1. Number 2, it comes to Christianity and Islam. I'll talk about Islam because Islam had made a sea of a difference in Indian society. Gandhiji had not only the basic knowledge of Quran, but he had read that by heart, and he knew it very well. And he was the first person, eminent person, Hindu person, who used to say that Islam तलवार से नहीं फैलाया गया था. Islam is basically वो प्यार और मोहब्बत का religion है. He used to say it. And Gandhi ji ने इस्लाम को, he has projected Islam as like at par with any ideal religion in the world. But that doesn't mean that he had given absolute sanction to anyone. He was criticizing the drawbacks of Islam also. See, he didn't dispute it, no, this is it. And that is the reason that Muslims, a big chunk of a Muslim, were his admirer, because they thought that this gentleman, and they rightly thought, Muslims, that this gentleman is, seeing their religion in the right light. But otherwise, because of the invaders, Muslim invaders, then the Muslim rulers, and ruler, as you know, whosoever at that time it used to be the monarchy. So they always used to do a lot of injustice to the, maybe Hindu ruler or Muslim ruler, to the masses. So generally people were very hostile. So when this is, I'm coming back to Islam. Just imagine it, that in 1915, he had come to India, Gandhi. And in 1940, people don't remember that. I'm telling you something very rare fact. In 1940, Gandhi, with the people of same kind of thinking from Muslim community, eminent people like Abdul Kalam Azad and all, and there are other names, and they had pooled the idea how to bring the 2 communities closer. So they had this idea that Muslim prayers will be done in temples, important temples, and Hindu bhajans and other things will be done in important mosque. Though it failed, it has been done like Muslims. the rituals were done in temples, but those, radical Muslims, they didn't allow, and it failed. But I'll have to give the credit that he was the person who had at least tried it, what he believed in it. Second thing. Third thing, that as far as the Christianity goes, he was all praise for Christianity as well, but he criticized all those Christians, missionaries who were coming here, doing, this like providing health care to poorest of the poor in the society, and especially in the tribal belt, they were going and doing that, and then providing a good education. But they had it with ulterior motives. They wanted to convert people, the missionaries. They wanted to convert Hindus as well as the pagans, which were in Northeast. They had no religions. So it was easy for them to convert. Gandhiji was against it, and Gandhiji was very vocal. He said, no, that's wrong. Now I'm coming back, apart from religion, I'm coming back to the economy. Economy, as we already know, that India is an agriculture-based country. So our economy used to start from there, from the villages. But that Gandhi, even that time also, that today people talk about, vocal for local. And even that time, Gandhi had, he said, that's, number one, we should use the Swadeshi. We use the product which we made ourselves, number one, so that money doesn't go out. This is relevant today also. Then he said it should be from the villages, different remote villages. If we provide the opportunities of earning money, I'll not say employment, I'll use the word, if we give such kind of infrastructure where we can provide opportunities to the rural folks in the remotest of India to earn and eke out their livelihood, then what will happen? The people who are migrating from small villages to big city, they will not come. They will not be overcrowded, and there will be a very ideal balance of population all over the India, and in turn there will be a very ideal balance of the distribution of wealth which Indian economy is generating. It's not in only one hand, two hands. See, third thing, he said something very important about the economy. He said, see, that's a great man that time. I'll say, man, you can't deny that. He said, all the professions are the same. Mr. Mani, you just give it a thought what I'm saying. Apparently it looks very, ridiculous, but not, it's not. He said, all the professions are equal, all the skills are equal. So, the money should be provided, money in reward should be provided on equal level. Now you say, there's a doctor, there's an engineer, there's an army officer at the front, and the third person is, he's an engine driver. Why? Or he is administrator of a very small school. How can that? No, see, you can give prime prestigious place to a teacher or engineer, doctor, but you have to give the same amount of the money, because if the smallest of the person, peon or chowkidar, is not working the society properly, the society will collapse. You take out any person, engineer, society will not work, doctor will not work, you peon, it will not work, sweeper, it will not work. So almost all are important, but there are certain bright sparks. You give them the importance, but give the importance by better social acceptance. Agree. Maybe I have no problem. That is what the Gandhi's approach was.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhatt, for explaining two things so clearly. One is, of course, why Gandhi is so relevant, even more relevant today, and also because of your thoughts, why we call him a Mahatma. Thank you for finding time to join with us today. And viewers, that's it for today. We'll join again next Thursday in Straight Drive. Namaskar.